Hi, everyone. I'm Daniel Wingefeld, Marketing and Programming Manager for the Chagrin Documentary Film Festival. We're proud to be a community partner for the Cleveland International Film Festival, and this year we are supporting the documentary A Cops and Robbers Story. Today I'm joined by director Elinka Kelagorano, producer Mara Adina, and subject of the film, Corey Piggies. How did you first get involved in Corey's story? Like, how did you first hear about it? What led to this film?
Well, I guess I'll take that. It's actually a very strong memory that both myself and Mara, who's the producer on the film, have. We were doing research on a documentary series, and we came across an article that spoke about Corey's story. And I still remember that day when we were in the office. We were both reading about it. We stopped, looked at each other, and said, "Forget about the series. This is a feature documentary. This is our next project. We have to get in touch with Corey and start this conversation." And I think for me, what really grabbed me at that kind of first contact was how he defied stereotypes and preconceptions and all these received images and ideas we have about what a cop is, what they should look like, what their background should be. So I think that was the initial spark, and we got in touch. I think in the next few days we were already Skyping, and that was the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
So Corey, for you, before this came along, were you actively like hoping there would be a documentary or a film, like something to really tell your story?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me again. Listen, if you, I don't know if you read my book, Once a Cop. I always had this vision of telling my story because I knew that I was police unusual. Like, from what I was doing, you got to understand, I was 5 years removed from carrying guns, selling drugs, shooting at people, to becoming a New York City police officer. And it was just like, I knew that it was a story that had to be told. We don't touch in the documentary, but we talk about in the book is I journaled. I knew that I had a story to tell, so I kept journals like 1992, 3, 4, 5. Like, you know, when I got my book there, we walked into the office and had like all these red books. And Elinka used the journals, right? Elinka used the journals, you know, so she like know my whole life. She took everything from my house. She just took everything.
They're still here in a box.
Yeah, they still there in the box. So I always had this vision on telling my story. I definitely wanted to write a book, and I just like, you know, we got to do some type of adaptation, movie, doc. I didn't know what was going to happen. And then, you know, these two beautiful angels just popped out of the sky. And at the time, we was actively looking to do something, do some type of deal. And we was talking to different people, but they came along. And like she said, we had the first Skype we had. It was just, I'm like a vibes person. I just felt the vibe. I felt their sincerity. I knew they was like up and coming documentary filmmakers. Obviously they wasn't Paramount Studios, but you know, and I always was the underdog. So it was like, listen, let's take this shot with them and see what happens. Let's do it. And the rest is history. And so my involvement, Elinka made sure that I was pretty much involved every step of the way for the most part. You know, obviously she's the director, she made film decisions, but she pretty much kept me abreast. Her and Mara just kept me abreast on everything that was happening.
Now, Elinka and Mara, one of the questions I had, you know, watching the film, you utilize a lot of flashbacks and like recreation. Was that something that in the beginning you knew had to be told? Like, because a lot of documentaries, they kind of go the route just talking about it, where you went the route of actually showing it with recreations that were very well done. Like, was that something initially you knew you had to do, or where did you get to the point where you're like, we need to tell it this way?
Well, I think it's all part of the process. It was a 3-year process, getting to know Corey's story and to understand how to best tell it. And I always, in the first 1 or 2 years, I just conduct a lot of interviews, of course, with the main character, but then everybody else who's involved in the story, and, you know, try to understand the main themes and what the core and the essence of the story is. And then I devise the strategies to best tell it. And there's this big part of his life that is so important and so essential to everything that came afterwards in Corey's life and determined his career. The part that happened in the 80s, so a long time ago, when he was a young boy growing up in Jamaica, Queens. And it's also a part that can risk being reduced to something that is, very simple, just the life of a young criminal. And it's so much more, this part of Corey's life. And I wanted to be able to immerse the audience in that part of his life and have them be there with him. And we whittle it down to just one key moment and how that happened, what led to it, and how that transformed his life, and kind of was what set up his career in the NYPD afterwards. I always like to work with hybrid modes of storytelling, but they have to serve the story. And in this case, we decided it was this essential moment that changed his life that we wanted to focus on.
I think another thing that it did so beautifully was to connect you to this other really big element of Corey's life, which was his friendships and that core group that he had from being a young kid that he still has to this day. That is such a wonderful and also quite universal thing. So many of us, if we're lucky enough, have had childhood friends that have stayed with us for such a big part of our lives. And I think that was always one of my favorite parts of Corey's story, and to see them even today still celebrating each other and being there for each other and supporting each other through good and bad. So it was a beautiful thing that I think that the reenactments have managed to portray quite well.
And Corey, so your son portrayed you, correct?
Yes.
Well, so what was that like watching almost like your younger self on screen? I know like him like learning your walk. Like what was that like? I mean, that's got to be such an interesting, experience to live it and then, decades later see your son portray you in a film.
Yeah, so one of the best moments. First of all, I have to give all thanks to Alinka. This was totally Alinka's idea. I thought she was like out of her bat mind. Like, my son is not an actor. He can't act. What are you talking about? But she saw something in him. Her and Mara flew him from Georgia to New York and like pretty much had a boot camp for 2 weeks with him. And they was like, thumbs up, it's a go. He's portraying you. But one of the best parts is not even in the documentary. It's in the short on theguardian.com with him holding himself in the hospital. That part was like really moving for me when I first saw that on theguardian.com. So he's like playing himself, holding himself, and the baby got quiet. I don't know how he did it. And I could just announce this now to Lincoln Mara and you. He just had a daughter. He has a daughter.
Oh my God.
Yes.
That moment finally came.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Yeah. So it was come on, it was a proud papa moment to have me looking on a big screen, looking at my son portray me. And the whole walk epidemic was like quite funny because he was just walking all around Queens trying to do this walk. And it was funny. Everybody was like, yo, why is he walking like that? He was trying to portray the walk. But it was good. And I think some other things might come for him after, Mara sells this documentary and get him on the big screen. So, it's good. And last point, my best part was in the van, because there was no talking and he was just like acting out. Like, it was amazing. Like, I don't know how Lincoln got him to do these facial movements, and it was just amazing. I was looking and saying, damn, my son is like really acting, because it was like no words. It was great. So yeah, it was a proud
It's because
moment.
he's very talented.
Yeah, he definitely did a great
Very talented, and we were lucky enough that in the process of making this film, we had quite. Ilinka made sure that we had a lot of time to sort of workshop with the cast and spend time. What's gold on a film is always time, and we somehow managed to do that. We had about almost a month and a half of just spending time with the entire cast and workshopping scenes and playing with the script and finding what felt natural for them. And that was just, Ilinka just giving everybody that time to find the characters and find characters that were very close to who they were as well, and something that felt true and natural to them. And I think that's definitely one of the big reasons why these sort of scripted portions were so real.
No, I think a lot of people are surprised when they find out how long it takes for a documentary to be made or the research going into it. And you mentioned, I think, 3-year relationship. What can you tell us about the time frame? Like, were you filming a lot of this in 2017, 2018, before the Guardian piece? And then did COVID at all delay anything or any plans that you had with the film?
Well, by the time COVID arrived in our lives, we were already in the edit. So, but it did affect everything, of course, because we were kind of in the final stages of almost locked the cut. So we were moving into online color grading, sound mix, music recording. So we had to figure out and record the music with musicians in different countries and sound mixers in different countries, and it was all going a bit crazy. It meant it took a bit longer, and it was also, of course, a lot of the magic was a bit, well, some of the magic wasn't there because it's so much better to be in the sound mix studio or to be there with an orchestra or to have these experiences in person, as we know. But I think we managed to find the workflow in the end and lock the film.
Now, I don't want to give too much away about Corey's story, even though I'm sure people have read his book or seen him even on CNN interviews. But there are a couple moments in this film that like totally had my attention beyond anything. I mean, there's one, without giving anything away, but where you're showing the VHS tape of the Supreme team, the images coming up on the screen. And I mean, I've just, I can't relate, but I can relate. Like, you can put yourself in that situation where the stress of your previous life being revealed to your new coworkers. I mean, I can't imagine what that was like for you in reality. And then it was portrayed so well in the film that anybody watching that is going to be like on the edge of their seat, stressed out. I mean, what was it like for you, Corey? I mean, is that watching that in the film, is that a moment that you look back to and you kind of like almost stress about? Like, was it portrayed almost accurately to how you felt?
Oh yeah, it definitely was portrayed. Alinka, she's just like on point, spot on with everything. And as I'm looking at that, people don't know, like, when I popped that VHS tape in, I didn't know what the hell was gonna be coming on the TV screen. So as I'm playing it, like, I'm looking and I'm praying, saying, God, please don't let me be in this flow chart. It starts with Supreme down to, luckily they stopped there like before they got to the street workers. But yeah, I'm sitting here. But then the other side of my brain is looking at these cops saying, they don't even have a freaking clue. Like, I'm teaching them about this Supreme team. I didn't even need no paperwork to teach them about them. But the work came down. They like gave me a script. This is what you say. I didn't even use the script because I already knew everybody there. I had personal relationships to it. But so that was just another moment in my police career that I just like wiped my forehead and was like, phew, got over that one. What's next? So I had to do this for 21 years, What's next?
So related to that, once you retired, you wrote a book, and it's talked about in the film, but can you tell us a bit about, like, you always wanted to write or tell your story, but I mean, that was a big decision to, really go out there and tell your story. I mean, between how your friends or family would react to how your former coworkers would react, going into that, I mean, did you expect the kind of reaction? Like, or what was it like between your coworkers versus your friends? Like, can you tell us a bit about that?
Well, writing a book, to be honest with you, I really didn't even put no thought into it. It was just like, I'm telling my story. Like, I was an exceptional police officer. The commissioner of New York City took me to the president of the free world and gave me a personal introduction to Barack Obama. So like my life was always a hustle. I hustled in the street, closed that chapter, went into the army, hustled that, closed it, policing, I closed it. And that, so my mindset is I'm about to hustle books. For the life of me, I didn't realize I was going to be on the front page of every periodical around the world, you know, Ireland, Europe, everywhere. And all I wanted to do was tell my story of a misguided young kid that made some mistakes and then had this arc of transformation that every young, low socioeconomic neighborhood kid should look to and be like, this is a hero. But that wasn't the case. Everybody looked at me like I was the villain. You know, people want to lock you into 5 years of selling drugs and they forgot about 45 years the rest of my life, which Alinka was able to tell this story. So now people that have seen my story in newsprint, they're like, he wasn't a thug cop. Wow, this guy had a phenomenal life. You know, but I can't fight Rupert Murdoch, who's like this billionaire. I had to wait for Vernon Films to take 3 years to put this story together and put it out. And, you know, the good thing about it is once she dropped this film, nobody else has anything to say. The thug cop is gone. Nobody says, because she laid out the entire story for the world to see. And for that, you know, I'm going to be forever thankful for her and Mara laying that story out to tell the real story.
That's amazing.
Well, thank you for sharing it with us.
Yeah.
And for all my family and friends, Danny, like, they love me. So it wasn't the police, you know, I don't even know if the police hate me, because I was telling Linka that every time I see the cops, they hugging and kissing on me. So I don't know who hates me or who loves me. So, but I'm not even worried about that. You know, we just trying to push this a cops and robbers story to as many people in the world that we possibly can. And hopefully it could change some young misguided kid life, like, you know, I changed.
And one of the things you talk about is, I think, like community policing or being a part of the community, and how you were able to, I don't know, interact with them or have that relationship with people that some cops don't have. You know, so when you look back on your career and you look at what's going on maybe today with law enforcement, what do you see like that law enforcement could gain from your story? Like if they read your book or, you know, spoke to you, what could they learn from your time as a police officer that they could maybe translate to make them better cops?
They could hire me as a consultant. That's one of the first things they could do. But no, listen, all people want to do is be treated with respect. And once policing figure that out, like everybody just wants to be treated with respect. If it's a white, black, green, Asian cop that comes to them, think about it. Most people only gonna have 1 or 2 encounters with a cop in their entire life. But that one encounter, that cop has to treat it like it's the first time that he ever had that encounter, because that cop not only represents his police department, he represents policing around the world. You know, George Floyd gets killed. It's not just that they hate the cops in Minnesota. They hate the cops around the world for George Floyd being killed. So that's what's like so important. Cops have to understand that every time they go out there, every single interaction, they should respect everybody, you know, just like they want their family to be respected. And once policing grasps that, which that's not even rocket science to me. It's just like, treat everybody with respect. If you have rogue cops, get rid of them. You have bad leaders, get rid of them. This is easy stuff. It's not rocket science. You know, most cops got a high school diploma or a couple of credits. Like, they're not physics. Like, this is easy stuff. Treat people with respect, and the profession will be respected a lot more than it is today.
Mara and Alinka, what do you hope viewers take away from this film?
Well, I think in an ideal case, I would hope that they leave the online cinema room and have conversations and just very heated discussions about criminal justice and about who gets a second chance, about the crisis in policing that's unavoidable, and you also raised that topic, and about different ways of policing. And I really hope that the way that Corey left that mark initially on me by challenging stereotypes and preconception, it does the same to the audience. And another thing, because it's very dear to all of us involved in the film, and Mara mentioned it, I really hope that the film, and especially the dramatizations, challenge the preconceptions people might have about the world that Corey grew up in, that Jamaica, Queens of the 80s, that, like I said, could mistakenly be reduced to crime and poverty, but that on the other hand, it was such a world of community and bonds, and it formed the great cop that Corey later became. And those friendships that he formed back then are still with him. And after he told this story publicly, and the police and the NYPD completely turned their back to Corey, those friends were still there, and are still there. And you can see that, you know, they all meet at the end of the film, and it's just wonderful. And I haven't had friends for such a long time, so it's very admirable.
Yeah, I think Alinka took all the good.
Oh,
I took
sorry.
all of that. And definitely the biggest thing is that this idea of conversation. I think that's what it did to us when we first found the story and started to interview Corey and talk about it. Just, you know, we had hours and hours of talking about all of these things. And I think as we showed the film, even during post-production, that's what would happen. And I'm hoping that now, as it's starting to make its way out to audiences, and it will be out hopefully in cinemas and all of these different places, that people just walk off and talk for hours and research the different themes of the film. I think that's the most beautiful part of this story, that it makes you think, and it makes you hopefully consider things from different angles than you would have thought of.
So what's it like as a filmmaker, and then with the subject, you know, Corey being here, what's it like for you when you go to watch it and you see certain things not included that you wish were? What's that like?
I mean, from my point of view, and the way we approached it, it wasn't a biographical film. So also because Corey's story is amazing, and his life is amazing and crazy and full of dramatic events, we wanted to zero in on some key turning points, and be able to speak about this life lived on both sides of the law, and this unique perspective that he has. So that did mean giving up some great moments, and also it meant really focusing the storytelling and the way that we want to reach the audience. And, you know, if there were several events that were in the same kind of thematic area, then we would choose the strongest one, so that it really hits the nail on the head. Of course, there were, even from the dramatization side, there were a lot of magical moments, like the one that Corey mentioned, with his son playing his father, holding himself, this kind of crazy crazy moment that was going to be in the film, but in the end that it didn't work with the structure. So yeah, like you said, there were many cuts, many options, many drafts, but we had to really be focused and precise in the end. So I hope we did a good job. Corey, what do you think?
Yeah, it did an excellent job. I already know. I know Mara has ideas to use all that other stuff for promotions. So they'll get to see a couple of more pieces, I guess. I was very happy the way she structured it, especially like using that moment in the street, that street encounter, like really changed my life. And so she told the story. And I just was speaking to someone recently. I guess they saw it at the last film festival, and they like emailed me and was like, I want more, I want more, I want more. Like, there's no more coming, but stay tuned. You can watch it in Cleveland again.
So for Ilinka and Mara, you know, what kind of advice could you give to filmmakers? Because they're gonna be watching your film, playing at big festivals, and, you know, dreaming of getting to where you are. We can tell a great story that audiences from across the country, around the world, could potentially be watching it. Is there any advice maybe you've learned as filmmakers that you can tell to maybe a young college student working on documentaries? Is there anything that sticks in your mind as something that you wish you knew years ago?
Yeah, it's funny because I was just on a conversation with one of the directors that we're working on at the moment, and we were talking about something similar. I think for me, it's what's become really important as we've been sort of making films is to really hold very close to you and at the forefront of your mind why you fell in love with the story in the first place, and keep thinking about that and keep reminding yourself about that as months become years and the partners on the film grow and you're working with probably organizations and other producers and so on, and team keeps getting bigger and the story keeps changing and growing in all of these exciting ways. I think it's to have that sort of one central thing that of course changes and grows and develops, but to constantly think about what it is and for that to be the guiding light. I think it's similar to the editing process that on this film was like, I think almost 9 months, if I'm right. It's just to spend that much time working a cut, you have to constantly come back to, well, what is it? Why do we love it? Why is this important? So that you have something that guides you, because otherwise it can just, there's just so many options in filmmaking, regardless of whether it's documentary or fiction. There are options in different ways, but there has to be something that is guiding you, and then everything will work out. Hopefully.
Yeah, it's funny because I was gonna say a similar thing, but I can make it even more applied. I think when there's a subject or a character or a story that really grabs your attention and you think, oh, I really want to make something about this, whether it's a short or a feature or I don't know yet. First, let it rest for 1 or 2 weeks to see if it's still like buzzing in your head and it's really grabbed you. And then I would just write it down exactly what it was that made you fall in love with that story, character, idea. Just write it down in a little blurb and you can put it away. You don't have, I think I have a different idea than Mario. You don't have to look at it every day or every month. But in those difficult moments, whether it is in production, when you realized, oh my God, but we didn't get that interview that we really wanted, or do we need that, or should we have more interviews? Or that's a moment where you can take it out and think, oh, are we accomplishing this magical thing that we saw at the beginning? And then in post-production, I think definitely it becomes your guiding light. Like you said as well, I mean, you have so many cuts, so many options, so many directions, especially like with Corey's story, because like I said, it's so many things happened. So that guiding light is important. And I think another really important thing, and with Cops and Robbers story, it was the most magical moment was when I shared it with Corey, when I shared the cut with Corey, and I was watching it on, couldn't meet. I would have loved to do it in person, but he watched it with Sean, his best friend that you see in the film, and also Junior, who plays him. For me, that was the most magical moment. When I would hear their reactions and I would see that they feel that, that the scenes accomplished what I was hoping they would accomplish, and they were triggering the reactions that I, in my wildest scenario would hope they would. So yeah, especially in this year where we can't share it with an audience and be in the room and hear their reactions and have that amazing moment of releasing a film in the world, it was just magical to see Corey and Sean and Junior watch it and react to it.
I just hope we can all get to see each other and work in the same room in the next year. That's the biggest focus, the thing that we're missing the most, I think. And the big thing will be to finally watch the film with Corey in a cinema, and we're hoping
in New York
that will happen in New York
with all the characters in the film and all the actors.
So fingers crossed, this autumn will be the time when that will happen. So we're excited about that.
Well, I want to thank each of you for taking time to talk about the film. And for anyone watching, where can they go to learn more about either your production company or Corey, like your website, where can people go for more information about the project?
Yeah, people could contact me at my website. My website is my name, www.coreypegues.com. And, you know, my social media is there and everything.
Yeah, and we're very active on Facebook, on A Cups and Rubber Story, Facebook, and Instagram, as well as on our vernonfilms.co.uk website. And yeah, we're constantly posting about screenings that are coming up, as well as the distribution news that will come out about the film. So lots of exciting news in the next couple of months. And we just wanted to say thank you so much to Cleveland Film Festival for having us. It's just been so exciting, and I'm so glad that the film will play for a good amount of time, and hopefully more people around the US will get the chance to see it this time around. And we would love to be there with you, but we're there in spirit.
And thank you, Daniel, for all the great questions, of course.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you very much. Again, love the film. I think anybody that watches it will also love it, be impacted by it. So congrats on the success of the film, and everyone watching should get a ticket because it's an excellent film. Highly recommended.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Dan.
you.